Hi, this is Joe from Pop Culture Zoo with you once again, and I'm standing here with Miriam Libicki. I have to say, the earlier conversation we have, I'm pretty. I don't even know where to begin with the work you've done. It sounds extremely personal, and I don't think it would be something that many people would want to tell. What kind of inspired you to do this as a graphic novel and a comic book?
Well, I lived in Israel for 4.5 years, and the last 2 years of that was in the Army. And right after I was discharged from the Army, I moved to Seattle. I was in Seattle University, and it was just such a big culture shock all over again. Coming from the States, moving to Israel, and then moving back here. And I just felt like that whole first year I was here, I basically didn't speak about Israel at all. Like, I just kind of had no way to explain it to people. And then it was for an art assignment like that the following summer. They just basically to do a digital comic, and I didn't know what to do a digital comic about, so I took one of my old Army diary entries and just basically illustrated it. And I really liked the results. I mean, I don't show that comic anymore because now
Right.
It looks horrible to me. But I really liked the results, and people were really interested. And so it seemed to me like a way that I could make sense of my experience, and just that was the way I could tell the story was through comics.
Now, is this just really from your viewpoint? Do you take any kind of political stances either way, or how do you go about, I guess, getting the ideas in your head and how you feel about things onto the page without coming across as preachy or anti or pro?
Right. Well, I think the most important thing is that it is a personal story and it is completely subjective, and so I think that's important. A lot of people say that the purpose of literature is to create empathy. Like, we learn to put ourselves in another person's shoes.
Right.
Through reading books, and so that's kind of what I think that it is sort of. I guess have a mission of peace and coexistence, and the way that I do that is I take Israeli soldiers and kind of show how they're kind of teenagers. And if somebody has another perspective, if they're on the other side, if it's somebody, from the Palestinian territories and their experience with Israeli soldiers, is completely different, then that's also valid. But if we're all reading each other's stories, then we're all humanizing each other.
Oh, exactly. That's a great viewpoint. Obviously, this would be sort of a hotbed topic. What kind of response and feedback have you gotten from this?
Well, I guess the fact that it is personal story makes it a little bit, harder to attack for some people. I have the main series that I do called Jomnik, which is all my army stories, and then I did another drawn essay that I call Towards a Hot Jew, the Israeli soldier as Fetish object.
Nice.
And so that's more about like the image of Israeli soldiers and the image like that I had growing up as an American Jew of Israeli soldiers and sort of the Western media images. So that gets into a little bit more edgy territory where I talk about, how soldiers are compared to Nazis and stuff.
Right.
But I'm still more talking about like images than facts on the ground. So it's interesting that for Jobnik, it's left-wing people who get really upset and they're like, how could you be drawing these cute Israeli soldiers? And with Towards a Hot Jew, like right-wing people get really upset and they're like, how could you like make the soldier and Nazi comparisons? Like, I don't make
Right.
that comparison. I'm quoting somebody. But it's really interesting that, I kind of, the reactions are very different based on my different comics, and then just, a lot of people on the right will say, this is such an uninformed view, this is such a knee-jerk, anti-Israel, and then I say, did you know I served in the army? And they're like, oh.
That kind of shoves them up.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any correspondence from anyone who is currently now in the Israeli army or has served that has just been like, wow, that's what I went through?
Kind of, yeah, because there's comic shops in Tel Aviv that, I sort of, whenever I go back to visit, I'll visit those comic shops and I'll drop off some comics. And when my graphic novel came out, I actually launched it in a comic shop in Tel Aviv. And so that was a really different crowd because when I do it like in North America, then the thing is like, wow, Israeli soldier, like what's that like? Whereas in Israel, it's like, it's an American's perspective on the Israeli army. Like, so It's a really outsider view. Whereas in Israel, everybody grows up, with the thought that they're going to go into the army. So things that were really strange to me, are normal for them. So that's the part that they think is interesting. to kind of have this outsider perspective.
Right. So it seems like it's kind of a double perspective because you may be an outsider, but you were there and you served in the army. So yeah. Great. So is your main series, that's still an ongoing, continuing series?
Yeah. My goal is to do, my term of service was a year and 9 months, which is a regular, like, enlisted female tour of duty.
Right.
And so my goal is to do that year and 9 months in comics form, and I'm just under halfway through now.
Awesome. Well, Miriam, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Joe from Pop Culture Zoo. Look for some more interviews. Thanks.